You don't even know how happy I am to be finally in the month of September, to be getting into the cozy season and the beginning of fall, even though where I live, it's still pretty warm. But today it's raining, so I'm happy about that. And I'm really happy to be recording my first actual video with content, because my previous one was just my presentation. So today I'm recording my first official video, and I'm gonna be talking about 14 books to read before 2024 ends. And I decided to do it a little bit differently and split it into halves. The first 7 books are gonna be books that I have really enjoyed and that I want to recommend to you guys. And the second half are gonna be 7 books that are in my TBR for the rest of the year. These are books that have been on my bookshelves for quite some time and that I haven't read yet. And I think these have fall vibes, dark vibes, and just overall cozy themes. So I'm really excited to read them. So let's get on with the video. I would say, if you're new, my name is Idis and I'm from Barcelona, and I create content about cozy, slow, intentional lifestyle and books and writing. But you're probably new because this is my second video. So welcome. I'm gonna start with the first half of these 14 books. These are 7 books that I've read and I recommend to you guys. This one is The Humans by Matt H. I've only read 2 books by him and I've loved both of them. They are actually some of my favorite books ever. I think they both have very similar themes. They talk about the human experience, mental health issues, and what it's like overall to be a human in this planet, and especially this one. This one is about an alien that takes over a professor in Cambridge, and he just takes over his life. He starts living in his home, he pretends to be him, he, just hangs out with his wife. They have, I don't know if they have a son or a daughter, and they also have a dog. And literally he hates everything about the human experience. He hates the people, the food, the touch, everything except for the dog that this family has. So basically you see and you experience what it's like to be a human by someone that's not actually a human, and how he grows through it and how he learns to love some aspects of it. And I don't know why, but I was crying by the end of it. There's this list this alien does that it's called Advice for a Human that had me sobbing. I don't know why. It was just so wholesome, and the whole book made me think so much about my own experience being a human and how I go through life. And it also made me see life through a different lens, obviously the lens of an alien that doesn't understand why humans act the way that they act. So yeah, I had a blast reading this one. I find myself thinking about it from time to time, and it's actually pretty short, so I think I read it over a weekend. If you want something quick to read before the year ends, I would highly recommend The Humans by Matt H. Okay, the second one is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. You know how there's these 2 groups of people that love books that are character-based and books that are plot-based, and obviously the most important thing, or the thing that a book cannot survive without, is strong characters. But I'm usually more a plot girl. I love it when the plot is complicated and it has many layers and it has me thinking and I don't know what's going on. If you combine a really good plot with obviously really good characters, that's the kind of book that I usually like. But most of the time, if a book is mainly and purely character-based, I don't really like it. But not with this one. I would say this is a mainly character-driven book and I still loved it. It's actually written or explained through letters that Vivian writes when she's really old to Angela, and the whole book is told through letters. As I said, it's about Vivian, and she starts explaining her life, and she actually explains her whole life from the time when she was 19 and her parents basically kick her out of her house and send her to live with her aunt in New York. Her family doesn't really like her aunt Peg because she's sort of an eccentric woman living a different life, not a very traditional life, but they send Vivian with her anyway. And from there we see how Vivian goes to New York and starts experiencing a whole new life in a whole new city, finding herself, making lots of mistakes, lots of bad decisions. And I actually really appreciated that about her, that it's not like this perfect character and like not even a good type of character. She actually has so many flaws and so many moments of not knowing what the hell she's doing and, as I said, making really bad decisions. I found myself feeling identified with her in many situations, and I loved how unique she was and how true to herself she stays throughout the whole book. She doesn't fall into what people expect from her or what society says, even though she's, I don't know what age, I don't know exactly what year it was, but it was the summer of 1940. So it was quite a while ago, and society was obviously different, and you were expected as a woman to behave in a certain way. But she doesn't fall into any of that. She lives a life true to herself and true to what she wants to do. And she keeps finding herself throughout the book. So yeah, I love this evolution of the character and just getting to know Vivian a bit more throughout the book. It took me a while to get into it, but I ended up really loving it and really missing Vivian after I finished this book. So I would really recommend it. The next one, oh my gosh, I loved this book. It's again not the type of book that I usually read, but it was just what I needed at that moment, and I really recommend it to you if you want something cozy and just autumnish for this fall. The book is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I loved it so much. You know, it's the same kind of feeling that Gilmore Girls give me. It's the kind of book that you know that you're not gonna get heartbroken by, you're not gonna suffer through it. You're just gonna have a good time, a chill time, and you're gonna enjoy while you read it. It's not a complicated story, but I thought it was well executed, well written. I love the characters. It has found family themes. It's about Mika Moon, and she's a witch living in this world where she's not supposed to share that she's a witch, that she has powers and magic, and she has to keep it to herself. But one day she receives a message from 3 very young witches that ask for her help, and she decides to take up on it, and she goes to their house. She stays there for a while and she's living there with them. She meets these 3 young witches that are actually just kids, and there she also meets the people that work in this house and Jamie, who is a librarian, and you know, they all get to know each other. I loved the relationships that, you know, form in this book. I loved the coziness of it all. It felt so good, and I wanted to read it again once I finished it. I think Sango is releasing or has already released another book this year, and I'm dying to read it because I just want more of this. There are some moments in your life where you just want to disappear from this world and go to a magic world where everything is just so wholesome. The next book that I want to recommend to you is actually the complete opposite to The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, in the sense that it's not an easy book, it's not a cozy book, it's actually a pretty dark and complicated book. It's The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. It's the first book of a trilogy. It won the Hugo Award, which is a pretty important award, and it's a science fiction with, I would say it's also kind of a dystopian book, but yeah, science fiction, fantasy, dystopian vibes, but actually very dark atmosphere and themes and lots of trigger warnings, I would say. Just so you have an idea, on the very first page, the main character, or one of the main characters, point of views, goes through something pretty traumatic that involves a big betrayal by her husband and also the death of her children. So as you can see, pretty dark themes. This is not a spoiler, it literally happens on the very first page. The 5th season is actually about a world where I don't know how many years it was, but every few years there's a 5th season where it's almost as if Mother Nature was angry at humans and it manifested it through big catastrophes. I'm gonna read to you a bit of what it says in the back because I think it represents the vibe of this book so well. It says, "This is the way the world ends for the last time. It starts with the Great Red Rift. It starts with death, with a murdered son and a missing daughter. It starts with betrayal and long dormant wounds rising up to fester. This is the stillness, a land long familiar with catastrophe, where the power of the earth is wielded as a weapon and where there is no mercy." It's told by 3 different points of view and it had me hooked the whole time. I loved how it had me thinking, how it had me just wondering what was going on the whole time, and how it was all so well done, well connected, and it had me just I need more by the end. So yeah, if you haven't read it, give it a try. I loved it, especially if you like books like this. But yeah, just bear in mind that these 2 books are the complete opposite vibes. So I love both, so you can actually be a person that loves these 2 different vibes. But yeah, just have it in mind and go for the mood that you need in that moment. The next 2 books are gonna be really quick because they are non-fiction, and the first one is actually like this. It's tiny, but ever since I read it, like I think I read it either 1 year ago or 2 years ago. Ever since I read it, it just stuck in my mind. Ever since I read it, I just find myself thinking about it from time to time, and it's on The Shortness of Life by Seneca. It's a short compilation of Seneca's letters. I started reading it because I was so into Ryan Holiday in that moment. It was helping me so much to get into Stoicism, even though it's one of the branches of philosophy that I never thought I would be into. But yeah, here I was, really finding myself so interested in philosophy, Stoicism, and I just wanted to pick up this book by Seneca, and I just wanted to read a bit more by the original sources. And I find it so fascinating how, even though it's been like, I don't know how many thousands of years since this man existed and wrote these letters, maybe the external things of the world have changed, but the human experience is exactly the same. The kinds of thoughts, the kinds of life problems, society problems, they are exactly the same. It seems almost as though we haven't learned that much, or we haven't evolved that much, and it's obviously because our brain hasn't evolved that much, if any. So yeah, I found it really interesting and so comforting to be able to feel identified and just seen through someone that lived thousands of years ago. The other one I recommend to you if you like writing, if you have the goal to write a book, or you're currently writing a book, and it's Write for Life by Julia Cameron. Julia Cameron is the author of The Artist's Way. I'm sure you know that book. And I was thinking about reading that book and I was so ready to do it. But when I was in the bookstore, I found this one and I thought, why not just go to the most specific book by her that's gonna apply to me. It's not just creativity in general, but creativity applied to writing a book. It's actually a 6-week Artist's Way program. So I read it, I loved it. I'm actually gonna read it again because the first time that I read it, I just read it through, like the whole thing. I wasn't doing the actual program and I wasn't writing any book at that time. I just wanted to see how it felt and the exercises or just the thoughts that it shared and to get inspired. And I really liked it. Of course, there's parts of it that are a bit repetitive and I don't know, they are maybe more filler. But for the most part, I loved it. I'm gonna for sure reread it when I'm back to writing my book, which is gonna be really soon. And there's a couple of exercises and perspectives that really helped me with creativity and with writing. So I would highly recommend if you are wanting to write a book. I actually just recorded this same video in Spanish for my Spanish YouTube channel. And there's this one book that I'm just realizing that was in the list, but it doesn't have a translation to English yet. Maybe this could be, helpful to get it translated, because I think it's a great book. Is Oscura es la noche de Raquel Brun, or by Raquel Brun. It's actually one of my fellow booktubers in Spanish as well. She's a Spanish author. She's written a couple of books already, and this one is by far the one that I like the most. But again, it doesn't have a translation. Maybe if you can understand Spanish or if you speak Spanish, you can read this book and give it a try, because I actually loved it. And it has, these fall vibes and mysterious and darky vibes that go really well with this season. But I'm gonna give you another recommendation that actually has translation to English, and it's any book by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Last year I read Marina and I loved it, and this year I'm gonna read The Shadow of the Wind, which I'm sure I'm gonna love because it's one of his most beloved works. So yeah, those are my recommendations, my 7 books that I've read and I've loved recently. And now I'm gonna move on to the second part, which are 7 books that I have not read, but I'm planning to read in these next couple of months before 2024 ends. As I said, these are books that I've had mainly, except for 2 books. These are books that I've had in my bookshelves for quite a while. The first one is A Darker Shade of Magic by B.E. Schwab. I have read Vicious by B.E. Schwab and I loved it. And I also read This Savage Song and the continuation of that book because it's a duology. I loved Vicious. I loved those other books. I loved those books by her. Vicious is actually one of my favorite books, so I don't know why I haven't read any more books by her. This is gonna be for sure next on the list. Plus, can we talk about the cover for 1 second? There is so many books in this list that have amazing and stunning covers, but this one is just speaking to me. By the way, let me know in the comments if you have read B. Schwab, if you like her books, because I feel like in booktube it's a hit or miss. I've seen people who love her books and people who just don't connect with them. The next one on the list is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I have never read any dark academia book, and last year for my birthday I asked people to just, give them to me. But unfortunately, I was going through, I don't know if it was a reading slump or just not reading that much, and I still have all of those books to read. So one of the first ones that I want to read is this one. I think this is one of the most popular dark academia books, and I think I'm actually gonna like it. The other dark academia book that I have, and again, just the covers, they are everything right now. But yeah, this one I would say is also dark academia, is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I think I'm actually gonna start reading this one first because I have more experience with Leigh Bardugo. I've read the Grisha trilogy, I've read the Six of Crows duology, and this summer I read one of her latest books. I'm not remembering the name right now, but I loved it. I really, really loved it. I know it's not one of her most popular books, but I think it might be my favorite. So yeah, I just love Leigh Bardugo. She has a really beautiful way of writing and creating just settings and characters and relationships between those characters that I really like. So yeah, I'm gonna go with this one first. Next one is a classic, and it's one of those classics that you've heard for so many years, just how great this book is, and I have it in my bookshelves. I bought it because I found this gorgeous cover and edition of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and I still haven't read it, but it's probably because it's not the smallest book. It's quite a big book, but I think these next couple of months are gonna be the months. It's gonna be the time to finally read Jane Eyre. I think it also fits pretty well with the fall theme. I have a feeling, maybe it's because of the cover and the edition, but I have this feeling that it's gonna be quite a dark book. So next on the list is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I don't know if anybody else does this, but I have this thing where once I find an author that has a couple of books that I would like to read, I go on this hunt to see which one is the best, because I don't want to start. If I know, by the people that have talked about it and the reviews and just the vibe that I'm getting from those books, if I know that I'm gonna read them anyway, I just don't want to start reading the best book that author has, because then I'm gonna be just disappointed by the next ones. I am perfectly aware that the best book, just by other people's opinion, might not be my favorite or my best book by that author, but it's just the information that I have. So yeah, I just go on hunt, I try to find what's the second or the third favorite book, and I start by that one. So that's why I chose The Starless Sea, because Erin Morgenstern is also the author of The Night Circus, which is also a book that I would like to read very soon. But since The Night Circus seems to be the crowd's favorite, I wanted to start by this one and then move on to the other one. I know I'm sounding crazy and really control freak, but let me know in the comments, please, if there's anyone else just doing the same as me. The last two books, I don't actually have them with me because I haven't bought them yet. I would love to get them very soon. I'm gonna go to one of my favorite bookstores in Barcelona, and I will probably include it in one of my next vlogs, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, the first one is Piranesi. I have heard so many things about this book, mainly that it's pretty dark and very weird, and that just calls my name. So yeah, I'm really excited to read it. Plus, it's by Susanna Clarke, and it's the favorite author by one of my best friends. I have not read anything from her. The other book that I've had recommended to me many times is that huge book that I think has over 1,000 pages. I'm gonna leave the cover somewhere in the screen because I don't remember the name of the book. So yeah, I thought that would be a little bit too much to start by, and Piranesi seems like a short, sweet book to read. I say sweet, but again, I think it's pretty weird. So yeah, I'm gonna start with that one, and then maybe if I like it, move on to the other one by the same author. And the other book that I don't have, but I would love to get very soon and read it, is Macbeth by Ava Reid. I read A Study in Drowning by her like some months ago, and I loved it. I loved the dark vibes, I love the characters. I know it's not a very popular or very beloved book, but I actually really enjoyed it, and I found it so, I don't know, just so cold and weird, and I had a good time reading it. So I would love to read some other works by her, and I think Macbeth was released this summer. If it hasn't, I think it's releasing pretty soon. So yeah, I'm gonna see if I can get my hands on it and read it soon. So yeah, I've been talking for over an hour again. If you haven't watched my introduction video and you have trouble understanding me, English is obviously not my first language, but I'm trying my best. So I hope you enjoyed this video and the recommendations, the bookish vibes. I'm gonna leave the full list with direct links to all of these books in the description, as well as my Instagram. I hope you have an amazing day, an amazing week, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!